What a difference a fortnight makes. 8 goals in our last 2 games, equalling our biggest ever Champions League away win and silencing the most in-form striker in Europe at his home ground. How have we changed so much? Arsenal 5, Sporting 1. Let's get into this review. Yes, hello and welcome back to Arsenal Unfiltered. My name is Mark, and like you heard at the top, on this episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, we're going to be reviewing Arsenal 5, Sporting 1. I'm sat here 7am on Wednesday morning. I wanted to record last night, but I was extremely tired, and I just thought it would be a bit of a weird pod if I was tired and tripping over my words. So I've woken up and I want to get this out for people to enjoy this morning on their way to work or in the morning in the office. And the reason I want to get it out so fast is because that game was so brilliant. 5-1 versus Sporting. Now, before I get into any of the analysis, I think that victory is so impressive because all the talk before was how good Sporting are, how are Arsenal going to cope with the challenge of Victor Gyökeres, the talk around what Sporting had just done to Man City in the Champions League, 4-1 versus Manchester City. That narrative was everywhere, well, especially in English media, I would say. And it's one of those games where it feels like we're expected to win, but equally there is jeopardy. And either way it goes, the media will write the narrative. So if it goes Sporting's way, it'll be Arsenal aren't good enough to cope with, Victor Gyökeres and this really good team and how brilliant they are and how bad Arsenal are. And if Arsenal win it, well, it's just Sporting. It's just Sporting. But I don't think we're going to have that today because of the manner of the win. 5-1, we were brilliant across the park, and it was an incredibly enjoyable experience to watch that game last night, because for the first time probably since that run early in 2024 where we were like putting in 5-0, 6-0 against Palace and West Ham, it felt like we were absolutely ruthless again. And that is exactly what we want to see. So I'm going to go through today a little bit about our attack, the attacking brilliance, kind of talk about that rocky 15 minutes that we had after half-time and the Sporting CP goal, and then touch on Gabriel, Saliba and David Raya as a three, because I think we're going to look a lot at the attack, and a lot of the post-match stuff is going to focus rightly, again, on Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, Kai Havertz. But those three had a really big part to play in this win. But we'll start with the attacking brilliance. And the right-hand side, I mean, if you've woken up and seen any of the pass maps this morning, you'd think that team just they can't play down the left, so they have to go down the right. And I think it's different to that. I think it's because we are just so good down that right-hand side. And we saw in the Forest game how good Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard are together. Today, and Yuri Timber, I should say. Today we saw another ingredient added into that right-hand side, and that was Kai Havertz. Now, Kai didn't get on the right-hand side that much, but his movement facilitated the chaos that they were able to create. He was everywhere through build-up play in the final third. And actually, I watched, for a number of times in that game, I watched the Sporting defenders almost with their heads on a swivel, trying to work out who to pick up. They couldn't isolate Kai Havertz in the middle to pick him up and play him out of the game. They couldn't pick up Odegaard because he's just everywhere all the time. And Timber does so much running through for both Odegaard and Saka to get overlaps, to get underlaps. They had to pick those runs up. They're trying to deal with Bukayo Saka, who is imperious in one-on-ones. They just looked like they had no idea. And to be honest, I was watching it at times going, wow, who's playing what position? Because, Bukayo Saka stayed out right a lot, but Timber, Odegaard, Havertz, even Rice came over to that side at times, just almost as like the the circle around that group. Partey did it as well. To join in like a 4 or a 5 at times. To really, what they would do is come together as a 5, knock a couple of passes around, and then release one at the right time. And we saw that twice for the goals. Release one at the right time past Sporting, having drawn all their players in. So all the Sporting players are drawn towards this group of 5 Arsenal players, and then one of them just bursts away. And we did see that, obviously, for the first goal. It was a Gabriel Martinelli goal on 7 minutes. Timber assist, and Rice just comes into that right-hand side space. He receives the ball and plays a fantastic kind of through ball to Timber, and it just exploits all of the room that Arsenal have been able to create, because they drew all of Sporting players into this kind of trap and then sprung from it. And Timber just is the one that makes the right run at the right time. And finally, we see Gabriel Martinelli getting to the penalty area for, it looks like a simple finish. I don't think it was quite that simple. It was slightly behind him. But ultimately, it was a lot easier than some of the goals he's scored and some of the attempts he's had to score goals, primarily because he's at the penalty spot, and it's so good to see him getting there and picking up simple goals. Kai Havertz picked up a simple goal in this game. I don't know if Martinelli was trying to score wonder goals or thinking, I have to do this kind of cut inside. I don't know if that's what they worked on over the summer, but actually just getting on the penalty spot will give him so many goals exactly like this, and it gave us the perfect platform to build a really good performance from. The work down the right hand side was brilliant, and I was really pleased with getting on top quickly, because in a Champions League away tie, we've seen it multiple times this year, the crowd can easily get excited and make a really raucous atmosphere when there's a potential big scalp. And we saw that when Sporting played City, in the sense that the stadium just became electric. It became like the 12th man, right? So to get a goal on 7 minutes through Gabriel Martinelli really settled our nerves. And then we obviously, I think it was around 22 minutes, we did the same thing again, basically. We drew them in using that kind of 4 or 5 model with Saka, Ødegaard, Timber, and then other players joining. In this instance, it was Thomas Partey. So he receives the ball on that right-hand side from those players. They've drawn all the Sporting players in. He clips a fantastic ball over the box for Bukayo Saka. When I first watched this, I thought, Bukayo Saka's not going to be happy about that, because that's going in, and Havertz has poked it home. I don't think it was. So actually, it's more attacking play, where, just like Gabriel Martinelli, Kai Havertz was just doing the simple thing, the pure number 9 poacher instinct of being in the 6-yard box and just tapping it home. We need to score more of those goals, don't we? And tonight, getting 2 of them is fantastic. A fantastic pass from Thomas Partey. Saka does his thing. No dramas there. I think he's on 15 goals and assists in 17 games now this year. Obviously, he scores the penalty to add to that. 15 goals and assists from 17 games. The only player really this year who's putting up similar numbers is Mo Salah. He's a little bit ahead of Saka, and he's having a Premier League player, I should say. He's having a ridiculous season himself. So I don't know. Saka's output this year feels like he's gone to another level. I think I've said that a couple of times on the show, actually. Just another level that I can't believe he's got another level to go to. We all love him. We know how brilliant he is. And I think he's becoming completely undeniable in the way he is playing. And then, obviously, we got a third before half-time, just a typical Arsenal corner. Huge, towering header from Gabriel Magalhaes. That is a lessening just quality, isn't it? Quality delivery, quality run, quality contact with the header. Nicolas Jova will obviously take plaudits again for another set-piece goal. We do have the system. We were using the play where they run from the back to kind of block people, and Magalhaes runs from the edge or the penalty spot. It's a great system. It is a great goal, but you've got to, again, give huge credit to Declan Rice. Huge credit, because I think his delivery, he had the great delivery for the Mikel Merino goal, Oh, but otherwise, a lot of his deliveries have left a little bit to be desired, and I think this was probably his best of the year. And it put it on a plate for Gabriel. He had to just make great contact with it, and it's exactly what he does. And it's probably one of my favourites of all of the goals, because it's so emphatic and it comes at a brilliant time. I want to just touch on that first half in general, because that first half in general, if you go and find an XG map for over the 90 minutes, not an XG map, an XG graph for over the 90 minutes, and just look at the first half of what Sporting created, it's basically nothing. And we're over 2 goals already. The one I've used is from Canon Stats. Check those guys out. The absolutely brilliant website, and they're on Blue Sky at the moment, producing awesome content. But yeah, their XG map graph shows Sporting creating next to nothing. Next to nothing. It's almost imperceivable. You have to zoom in. And that all came from how dominant we were going forward. We had so much of the ball, and I think I'm going to watch the game back a little bit later today. The movement from Kai Havertz, Gabriel Martinelli, Saka, Ødegaard was just out of this world. And it was relentless running from those guys. They pressed really well as well, which really disrupted Sporting. They were relentless in their off-the-ball runs to make space for their teammates, to make opportunities, to get us into spaces. And I don't know how much of the attacking brilliance we saw was from us being brilliant, but also this Sporting system. And I've spoken about this a couple of times on Blue Sky now. When I watched Ipswich Manchester United on the weekend, I thought, if this is the system Man U are going to go with, there is going to be so much space against them for elite teams. And I immediately thought 2 names I've already mentioned in this pod, Bukayo Saka and Mohamed Salah. And the space that system leaves at fullback and in that kind of number 6 spot, because there isn't really a true 6. Now, I've watched this system twice now this year. There isn't really a true 6 there. I thought, wow, those spaces are huge. They're going to exploit, top teams are going to exploit that so easily. And to be fair, when I saw that, I thought, well, it's only 90 minutes. They've only just started doing this. Maybe this system can be more compact, can limit more spaces, can deal with, electric players a little bit better. But we watched last night a Sporting team who've been playing this system a long time, the 3-4-3. I know Ruben Amorim's gone now, but the players haven't forgotten. The system is still the same, and we absolutely took them to the cleaners and took apart all of those spaces. And it was interesting, right? So the few times they did get forward in the first half, they didn't create much, but they did have a lot of players forward to try and suffocate the ball. And there were a couple of moments, only a couple to be fair, where I felt like we won the ball and then we turned and there were a lot more Sporting players than we're used to having opposition players right in front of our backline. And there were a couple of moments where we just didn't play out quite so well. And I thought, okay, well, that's why you play this system, right? You got 3-4-3. You've got a lot of players forward. You've got that 4 and then the 3 attacking players, the 2 10s or the 2 wide players, however you want to do it, to try and smother and win the ball back. And I just thought, maybe in the Portuguese league, that works perfectly because the standard's not as good. But actually, as soon as we kind of got our heads around it, we could go over the top to Kai. We worked out that Partey he had a really good game and was able to play through as well. So we just kind of managed that. And then the downside of the system, like I say, the space at fullbacks, the lack of 6, we broke so easily on them. So easily. There was no real resistance to our breakaways and to our attacks. And I just thought, watching Man U, I thought, oh, give me this lot now. Watching Sporting again last night, I thought, give me Man U right now, and we do have them in a couple of games' time. I'm excited to play that game. Having watched this, having watched how we play against that system, yeah, could be an interesting one. So watch out for that. Just going to go through my notes here. Yeah, I highlighted Havertz a number of times because, again, Ødegaard and Saka will always get the plaudits, but Havertz's movement was absolutely fantastic. I thought he did a really good job. But then we obviously came out for the first bit of the second half, and you had to expect a response from Sporting. You had to. I put this on Blue Sky about how actually away in the Champions League, you are going to, no matter how well you're playing, you are going to have to navigate periods where the game is difficult. This isn't a third round Carabao Cup tie. You know, we're not playing a team where just any threat that they pose is negligible and we don't really need to worry. This is a team who hadn't lost at home in 18 months, had won every game in the league so far this year, had a striker who was supposedly the most on-form player in Europe's top 5 leagues. Sorry, in Europe, not Europe's top 5 leagues. And they're going to offer some threat, right? They are absolutely going to offer some threat. And they did, immediately. There was a couple of attacks, and they got the corner, and they scored immediately from the corner. Now, on the corner, it's a worrying trend, and I put that on Blue Sky, that we keep conceding from corners. There was one against Bournemouth, wasn't there, where we were kind of done by a little bit of a routine, and it keeps happening at the near post, which is not ideal. I'm tempted, having watched it again this morning, not to overanalyze this one or put it down to like a system of how we're defending corners. Calafiori slips, right? And if he doesn't fall over there, he's probably contesting that challenge, that shot. I think it's very unlikely that anything develops because Calafiori is such a good blocker of shots. He is so physical. He goes down, and actually it's very difficult for David Raya to see anything through the crowd of people. So I'm not so worried about that one, but I do think we need to really think about how we're defending the front post at corners. It's becoming a bit of a trend, but I think this one has its caveats because of Calafiori falling over. But wow, did that stadium lift after that? It really lifted, didn't it? And the game changed for 15 minutes. And I was sat there as a very nervous Arsenal fan thinking, oh, this could go south here, this could go south. And that's what happens. That is what happens in these Champions League away games. One goal, the European crowds get up for it. The teams suddenly look like they'd swapped. And I wrote a couple of things down. I wrote that there was an absolute wild change in dynamic, and I was very grateful for the fact that we got 3 in the first half. Because if that had been 2-1, I think that dynamic swap would have been much steeper, much more intolerable for the Arsenal players, and the crowd would have they'd have smelled another scalp. I think because we got the third goal right before half-time, we were able to say, hang on, we've still got a 2-goal cushion, we just need to ride this out. And I think it quickly led to the crowd maybe just thinking, maybe this is a bit too much to hope for. We were very sloppy, though. Very sloppy. I think it's partly because Sporting suddenly got their press a bit better. Their press had been, not right, and suddenly they were pressing from the right sides all of a sudden. They weren't just pressing straight at players, which is very easy to play around. They bent their pressing runs, which suddenly just changed how we were able to keep the ball. And even Martin Ødegaard, who'd been so brilliant in the first half, lost the ball like 3 times in the space of about 10 minutes. And I thought, whoa, what's happened? What has happened here? It was like they made 11 subs. It genuinely was. Like they came out with 11 different players. All that said, though, James Benge on Blue Sky has put out a fantastic point that actually between the Sporting goal and our penalty, the rocky 15 minutes I was talking about, Sporting had 4 shots for a combined 0.14 XG. And only 4 penalty box touches. 4 shots for a combined 0.14 XG and 4 penalty box touches. So actually that period where I was certainly very nervous, it wasn't actually, when you look at the stats, and probably when I watch it back later, it wasn't that dangerous. It was simply we couldn't get our foot on the ball. We couldn't control it as much as we had. That gave Sporting a lot more time on the ball, and suddenly the crowd were up. All of those things combined to us feel very, very rocky. Very rocky. And actually, we had a couple of good Raya saves in that period and in the second half, but the penalty took the sting out of it. It's a stonewall penalty. It's clear contact from behind, brings Ødegaard down. It looked like it was his ankle again on first glance, and I was like, no. But it wasn't. He carried on playing, thank goodness, and it's a clinical penalty from Bukayo Saka. The keeper goes the right way and makes a great attempt to save the penalty, but it is so tucked in that side netting. Probably his best penalty for Arsenal. I often watch Bukayo Saka and think, you've got a great penalty record, but you don't strike the ball that great. That was not the case yesterday. It was a fantastic strike, and what we needed, exactly what we needed. He really is stepping up in clutch moments again and again and again. And for me, he just killed the crowd with that. And again, it's those players, Ødegaard winning the penalty, Saka converting the penalty. You know, they're just doing what they need to do in big moments. If that had gone to 3-2, or that 15-minute period had extended any longer, I don't know how well, we would have looked back at this result. Actually, you can almost forgive 15 minutes. But if Sporting started to dominate for 20, 30 minutes in that second half, I think we might have been looking at this as, okay, well, oh God, what happened there? But actually, Saka getting that penalty, Ødegaard getting that penalty and Saka scoring it, just meant immediately that we felt back in control of the game, and we can almost kind of move past that 15 minutes as, well, actually, they're a top quality opposition, and you're going to get that, rather than, our level dropped really significantly. So yeah, that was an important moment, and obviously the win was wrapped up in the end by Leandro Trossard. I think the goal difference, when you look at the table, goal difference is going to be so important by the looks of things. We really don't know what the Champions League outcome is going to be right now. This obviously helps us massively with our pursuit of a top 8 finish. But actually, there's going to be a lot of teams, by the looks of things, on the same number of points. So to get another goal is a simple one for Trossard. To get another goal, really, really important for us. I think Trossard probably needed it for his momentum. The goal difference is vital, but Trossard needed it for his momentum. Marino shoots, it's a good save, and Trossard just taps in the rebound with his head. So, simple one, we got to 5-1. We started changing players. Wanyeri came on. Gabriel obviously went off with a little bit of discomfort, but he was sat on the bench smiling. That picture came out, so I don't think we need to worry too much there. I think that was precautionary. Felt for Raheem Sterling. He was about to come on, I presume, for Bukayo Saka, but that's when Gabriel went down, so we had to kind of switch that up, and Kivior came on. So, yeah, I think overall a good night. A couple of players got a little bit of additional rest. Ødegaard obviously got off, which is great. We'll keep managing his minutes. And yeah, it was just a fantastic display to watch. Now, before I come on to one of my favourite parts of this display, if you have enjoyed this episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, or you've enjoyed any of the episodes, please do consider giving me a follow. I'm trying to grow the Arsenal Unfiltered community and grow this podcast, and a follow will make sure that you get all of the episodes that I'm producing straight into whatever your chosen podcaster supplier is. So, we do 3 times a week. I'm probably reviewing 2 games and doing a topical discussion. This week, it's the Sporting review that you're listening to right now. I'll review the West Ham game on Sunday, and I will also do a bit of a data dive on one individual player on Thursday or Friday. So, yeah, give me a follow and keep a listen out for those, because Arsenal Unfiltered is growing. We keep bringing you content, and we'd love to have you along for the journey. Okay, finally, the attack again will get a lot of plaudits this morning in the media, and that's fantastic, and it's so good to see us attacking brilliantly again. But right at the top, I mentioned that Sporting have the most informed player in Europe, Victor Gyökeres. And that was the narrative. Can Arsenal stop this guy? He had 24 goals, I think it was, in all competitions this year. For Sporting, a fantastic talent, we were led to believe. And the Manchester City hat-trick, I think it was 2 penalties, but a hat-trick nonetheless, was really maybe weighing on everyone's minds. And actually, this guy can do it against elite teams, although Manchester City aren't looking exactly like an elite team at the moment, but we'll come on to that. This player was touted as he's the big threat, and actually I thought to myself, this is the games, or those are the players, I should say, that Gabriel and Saliba thrive against. Actually, if you are a kind of hidden away striker who just, almost Jermaine Defoe-esque, who just pops up in random moments, that's what Gabriel and Saliba don't like. They don't like those players who just kind of float in, tap one in, and deal, get through games like that and aren't active and physical, because they can't then marshal that player, and actually they're having to kind of read it a lot more. And I'm not saying they're bad at that, but I'm just saying I think that's where they struggle a little bit more. Gyökeres he's not Haaland mould, right? Because they are different, they play differently, but he's a big, powerful striker in the same way that we've seen Erling Haaland play against Gabriel and Saliba. And if you're going to go into a physical battle against those guys, I'm sorry, you're going to lose. You are just going to lose. And he lost it last night. He really did. Some of his finishing was terrible, and I think that was absolutely because Gabriel and Saliba had him completely rattled. He couldn't just get an arm across them and knock them off the ball. Multiple times he drifted out wide and ran down the channel to either with the ball or to receive a sort of a diagonal pass. Saliba just went with him down that channel, just absolutely screened him away. And that's probably the position he takes up in the Portuguese league and runs straight through the centre-back who's come out there and just kind of demolished them and then gone on to score. But you can't do that versus William Saliba. He's so strong, so quick, so intelligent, reads the game better than anyone. He was there and just dealing with it. And same for Gabriel. Now, Gabriel, he didn't go down the right-hand side or our left as much as he did the other side of the pitch. But Gabriel, when he was up against Gyökeres, was so physical with him. So physical. And actually, same way he is with Haaland. He says, if you're going to come here for a fight, for a tussle, I'm going to win it. I'm going to win it. And in my match ratings, I gave Gabriel and Saliba the joint highest ratings, along with Saka and I think Kai Havertz, because I thought those two in particular dealt with a threat, in quote marks, that we had been told was insane levels. A player someone is going to go and spend 70 million quid on, 80 million quid on. I reckon Gabriel and Saliba just knocked a few quid off that transfer total, right? Because they just didn't give him anything. And the one I think of specifically is down the right-hand side of our penalty area. Actually, Sporting worked the ball into a decent position, and Gyökeres got the ball in that kind of channel of our penalty area. Saliba and Gabriel immediately just swarmed him. And Gabriel makes a brilliant tackle on the line, basically, lifts his head up and moves it away. And actually, you could see at that moment, Gyökeres just looked defeated. He looked absolutely defeated, because in a brilliant attacking position where potentially he usually gets a lot more time to cross the ball or attempt a kind of tight angle shot, he had two of the best centre-backs in the world just bear down on him and absolutely mug him off. And when Gabriel came off, there was two very interesting moments. The first one was Kivior got run up against Gyökeres immediately. And Kivior, bless him, I like Kivior. He's not Gabriel. He didn't have the pace to keep up with Gyökeres in a one-on-one. He did not have the physical ability to push him off or deal with him. And Gyökeres got his best chance of the game. Raya had to tip it onto the bar. And that was probably the point where we saw, actually, Gyökeres is a decent player, but not Gabriel and Saliba level. And then not immediately after that, a couple of minutes after that, there was a point where Gyökeres went down the right-hand side. And you'd expect Sporting's right, our left. You'd expect Kivior to be the centre-back going out with him. Saliba almost covered the whole distance between him and Kivior, and then the distance to catch up with Gyökeres, just to take him down into that corner. Just to say, Jakub, let me deal with him. So I think it's clear to me that Gyökeres is a good player, but Gabriel and Saliba are brilliant players, and they had a really, if a defender can be clinical, that was it, right? That's a clinical defensive performance. They were brilliant. I was delighted to see it. It reminded me of those duels with Haaland, where it's a big, powerful striker trying to run through them, and them saying, nope, we're going to read the game better than you. We're going to win pace battles against you. And even if you do get the ball, we are going to be so strong and so powerful, you're not going to be able to turn, you're not going to be able to get shots off. Gyökeres looked really ordinary against those two and really got his only joy when Jakub Kiwior came on. So good player, but not at the level of Gabriel and Saliba. That kind of wraps it up. It was a brilliant evening. Great to watch Arsenal be so clinical, so expansive, so much fun, again, to watch. And like I ended on there, I think we can't underestimate the contributions of Gabriel, Saliba, and David Raya. I didn't speak about David Raya. 8 saves in the game. A couple of really good saves down to his left-hand side. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Again, for all the plaudits the attacker are going to get, he needs his flowers too. So yeah, that wraps up this episode of Arsenal Unfiltered. I've already mentioned I'm going to cover the West Ham game and do a bit of a data dive later this week. So do please follow along for that. I think closing thoughts on this one is just how brilliant and enjoyable it was to watch Arsenal's joint biggest away victory in the Champions League, and it just feels like the tides are starting to turn our way. Things aren't going against us anymore. Things feel like they're moving in the right direction. And I don't know, I'm excited all of a sudden for the West Ham game rather than worried about us getting red cards and how we're going to play without injured players, etc. Just feels like since the international break, things are starting to move in our direction, and I love it when it happens like that. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to this review of Arsenal 5, Sporting 1. Like I mentioned in the middle, if you have enjoyed it, please drop myself a follow on your chosen podcast provider, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. It would really help me grow the Arsenal Unfiltered community. But thank you very much for following. Thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you very, very soon.